I've never been the kind of guy to jump to conclusions or assume the worst, but with Lisa, things had been feeling off for a while. We've been married for 5 years now, and honestly, I thought we had a good thing going. Not perfect, sure, but solid enough. She was always a little bitchy, quick to snap, and pretty damn good at hiding her true feelings. Still, I trusted her, or at least I thought I did. It started around 3 months ago. She began working late more often, claiming it was just extra hours at the office. She'd come home tired, sometimes with a little too much perfume, which I thought was odd but didn't really confront her about. I figured maybe she was just stressed out or trying to impress some coworkers. But then she started disappearing on weekends, claiming she was out with friends or doing errands. I didn't mind much at first. My job kept me busy, too. But I noticed she was hiding her phone more, locking her messages and taking calls in another room. That's when I started noticing small things. Her phone would ring, she'd glance at me nervously, and then quickly dismiss it. She'd get defensive if I asked about her plans, and her stories about where she was going or who she was with kept changing. It was clear she was hiding something, but I wasn't ready to jump to conclusions. I just kept watching, waiting for something concrete. One night I was cleaning up after dinner when I saw her phone light up on the counter. A message popped up from someone named Jax, saying, "Can't wait to see you tonight. Think of me." My stomach dropped. Jax was the name of the investigator we hired about my brother's mysterious disappearance. That hit me like a punch. Why would Lisa be texting Jax? It made no sense unless she was involved in the case somehow, which felt even more wrong given her attitude toward the whole thing. I was stunned. I didn't want to jump to conclusions, so I started digging. I found out Jax had been texting her more than I'd thought, late-night messages, plans to meet, and even some suggestive pictures. I wasn't sure what to believe. Part of me wanted to think it was just professional, a way for her to get info for the investigation. But then I remembered the way she'd been acting lately, secretive, evasive, defensive, and it all clicked into place. I couldn't just brush it off. I decided I had to confront her. Sitting her down, I asked straightforward, "Who's Jax? Why are you texting him so much?" Her reaction was immediate and bitchy. "God, you're paranoid, it's just work stuff. He's helping with the case, okay? Nothing more." But her tone was defensive, her eyes darting around. I knew she was lying. I could see it in her face. The next day I started snooping more. I checked her emails, her social media, and even installed a tracker on her phone. I know, but I was desperate. I found out she'd been meeting Jax in hotels, late-night rendezvous that she'd tell me were just work-related dinners. But I saw the receipts, the hotel bills. They weren't for dinner, they were for sex. The piece that broke me was when I found a hotel key card tucked in her purse. She'd been sneaking off, meeting him, having sex, and then lying about it all. The evidence was everywhere, and for the first time in my life I felt pure rage. How could she do this? How could she cheat on me with a guy who was supposed to be helping us find my brother? It felt like a betrayal not just of me but also of everything I believed about her. I wanted to confront her again, but I was furious. Her lies, her bitchy attitude when I caught her, her sneaky meetings, it all came crashing down at once. I didn't sleep that night. I stayed up, staring at the ceiling, feeling like I'd been punched in the gut. The woman I loved had been lying and cheating, and I didn't even see it coming. I felt betrayed, humiliated, and incredibly stupid for not noticing earlier. I knew I couldn't keep going on like this. I had to decide what to do, but right now, I was just trying to process what I'd found. It was like my entire world had shifted beneath my feet, and I was drowning in shock. How could she be so bitchy, so manipulative and dishonest? I felt a mix of heartbreak and furious desire for revenge. I didn't trust her anymore, and I knew that if I stayed silent, it would eat me alive. The next morning, I woke up feeling like I'd been hit by a train. My mind kept circling back to all the signs I overlooked, all the times she snapped at me for no reason, the times she brushed off my concerns. I couldn't believe I was blind to it for so long. And now, with all this evidence staring me in the face, I felt like I was standing on the edge of some terrible abyss. I decided I needed to confront her again, but this time I wanted to be prepared. I sat down with her in the living room, trying to keep my voice steady. "Lisa," I said, "I found out about the hotel, about Jax, the texts, the meetings. Who the hell is he really?" Her face twisted into something that looked like annoyance, but I saw the flicker of guilt behind her eyes. She rolled her eyes, sighing heavily. "Oh, here we go," she snapped. "You're so paranoid. It's just, he's helping with the case, okay? You're blowing this out of proportion. I've been stressed and I needed someone to talk to." It's not a big deal, but her voice lacked conviction. The way she was avoiding eye contact, the way her hands trembled just slightly, none of it added up. I stared at her, feeling my blood boil. "You're lying," I said firmly. "You've been cheating on me with Jax, and I want the truth, no more bullshit." She crossed her arms, glaring at me with that bitchy smirk she always puts on when she's trying to control the situation. "Fine," she spat. "Yes, I've been seeing him, but it's not what you think, it's just sex. I needed it. You're never around, and I was miserable. I got tired of pretending everything was okay." Her words hit me like a punch, but I wasn't ready to accept her excuses. She was a shit stirrer, always making herself look like the victim, always spinning some lie to keep herself in control. I felt a deep, painful ache in my chest. My wife, the woman I trusted, was sleeping with someone who was supposed to be helping us find my brother. That thought alone made me want to scream. And worst of all, she didn't seem to care how much she'd hurt me. She just kept throwing out excuses like she was entitled to do whatever she wanted because I was never around. I knew I had to do something. I couldn't just let her keep lying and sneaking around. I started planning my next move, trying to stay calm but feeling inside that I was close to losing it. Her confession was like a slap, but I needed to know how deep this really went. Was she just screwing Jax on the side, or was there more? Was there some twisted reason she'd been hiding all this? I decided to dig even deeper. I installed a recording app on her phone just in case she tried to spin more lies. I kept my eyes on her, trying to catch her in some sort of slip-up. Meanwhile, I also started secretly following her when she sneaked out. It wasn't hard. I already knew about her hotel rendezvous. I just needed proof, and I was determined to get it. One evening, I followed her to a shabby hotel downtown. I parked a block away, keeping out of sight. Sure enough, she slipped inside with Jax. I watched from the shadows, feeling every ounce of my anger swell inside me. They disappeared into the room, and I knew this was my moment. I couldn't take it anymore. I felt betrayed, humiliated, and furious, more than I'd ever felt before. I waited for about 15 minutes, then I knocked on the door. When she opened it, her face drained of all color. Jax looked surprised, but Lisa's expression was pure bitchy smirk. She looked like she knew she'd caught me. I pushed my way in, feeling the adrenaline spike. The room reeked of sex, of betrayal. I saw her lying there half-dressed with Jax standing nearby. The evidence was undeniable. "You fucking bitch," I spat, my voice trembling with rage. "I trusted you. And all this time you were sneaking around with him, screwing him while we're supposed to be building a life. How could you do this? How could you lie to me to my face and then hide it?" She tried to deny it, to spin some bullshit about how it's not what it looks like, but I didn't buy it. Not anymore. I felt my world shatter right then. The woman I loved, the woman I married, had been playing me for a fool. And somehow she was still trying to act innocent. I clenched my fists, fighting back the tears, feeling a mix of anger and heartbreak I'd never known. I knew this was the end of the line. I couldn't trust her anymore. Not after this. Not after she'd betrayed me in the worst way possible. I left her standing there in the room, crying and trying to deny everything, and I walked out in silence. The cold night air hit me hard, but I didn't care. I knew I had to figure out what I was going to do next. All I knew was that I couldn't stay with her. Not after this. Not after what she'd done. I felt hollow, crushed, like my entire life had been a lie. And all I could do was try to breathe through the pain and figure out how to pick up the scattered pieces of my broken heart. The days that followed were a blur of anger, sadness, and a sort of numbness I couldn't shake. I kept replaying everything. Her sneaky texts, her lies, the hotel room. It was like a sick movie playing on repeat in my mind. I couldn't look at her the same way anymore. She was still acting bitchy and defiant, trying to brush it off, but I saw right through her. The truth was out, and I wasn't about to pretend it was. I remember sitting alone in my office, staring at the wall, trying to decide what to do next. I kept thinking about my brother, about the investigation, and how all of this was tangled together in some sick web of betrayal. I didn't want to just walk away, not without some kind of reckoning. I needed her to face what she'd done, and I needed to figure out whether I could even forgive her or if I should just cut ties completely. One afternoon, I finally confronted her again. I couldn't hold back anymore. My voice was cold, calculated, and I didn't care about her bitchy attitude. "Lisa, this is over," I said. "I want a divorce. You've been cheating on me, lying to my face, screwing around with Jax while we're supposed to be trying to find my brother. I don't even recognize the woman I married anymore." Her face twisted into that familiar smirk, like she thought she was still in control. "You're overreacting," she shot back. "You always do this, blow things out of proportion. I'm not leaving. Why should I? I don't see what the big deal is." Her words hit me like a slap. She was still trying to spin it, still trying to hold on to whatever shred of control she had left. But I was done. Done pretending she hadn't shattered everything. I told her I had proof, photos, hotel receipts, recordings, and that I was going to see a divorce lawyer first thing in the morning. Her bitchy attitude only made me angrier. She yelled, called me insecure, said I was losing my mind, but I didn't care. She could scream, cry, lie, whatever. I wasn't going to stay with her anymore. In the days that followed, I started the process. I contacted a lawyer, gathered all the evidence, and plotted my next move. I felt like I was on a roller coaster, 1 minute furious, the next devastated. I couldn't believe how much I'd trusted her and how she'd used that trust to screw me over. It was a betrayal on every level, and I was struggling to keep myself together. Meanwhile, Lisa kept trying to play the victim. She'd call, text, plead, even act like she was the one who had been wronged. It was sickening. She kept saying she didn't want to lose me, that it was all a mistake, that she loved me. But I didn't buy it. I saw her for what she was, a manipulative, bitchy woman who thought she could get away with anything. One night I found myself out at a bar, drinking more than I should, just trying to numb the pain. I kept thinking about the last few months, about all the signs I ignored, about how she'd been lying to me from the start. I felt betrayed, humiliated, and angry enough to explode. But I also felt relief that I was finally taking control of my life again. I realized I'd been a fool for so long, trusting someone who clearly didn't deserve it, but I also knew I'd survive this. I'd rebuild, somehow. That was the only thing keeping me going. I knew I had to cut her out completely, focus on my brother and the investigation, and move forward with or without her. Looking back now, I see all the red flags I ignored. Her bitchy attitude, her evasiveness, her secret meetings. But nobody wants to believe their wife is cheating on them, especially not someone like me. I always thought I was a good guy, steady, loyal. And to find out the woman I married was cheating on me with a guy whose job was to find my missing brother, that's a kind of betrayal that cuts so deep you wonder if you'll ever recover. I still feel the sting, but I'm starting to see that sometimes the only way to heal is to tear everything down first. The worst part about all this isn't just the betrayal, it's how it made me feel like I was losing my mind. One night, after a long day of lawyers and packing up some of her stuff, I sat alone in the living room. Everything was quiet except for the faint hum of the city outside. I stared at the empty space where she used to sit, and for a moment I wondered if I was crazy for even thinking she was capable of all this. But then I remembered the hotel receipts, the photos, the recordings. The truth was staring me right in the face. I replayed those moments over and over, her sneaking out, her bitchy smirk when I confronted her, the way she lied to my face. It all added up. She'd been lying and cheating and manipulating me for who knows how long. I felt sick, like I'd been punched again, only this time from inside. I decided I needed to get some space. I told her to leave. I wanted her out of the house by the weekend. I didn't want her sticking around, trying to spin her way back into my life. She threw a fit, called me everything under the sun, controlling, insecure, jealous. But I didn't care. I was done playing her game. I just wanted peace, even if it meant being alone with this mess. Over the next few days, I threw myself into planning. I contacted my lawyer, who gave me some solid advice about the divorce process, and I started going through everything I could find: messages, emails, her bank statements. I wanted to cover all my bases. I also kept digging into her phone just to see if there was anything I missed, and turns out I didn't miss much. One night, I found a series of texts between her and Jax that were more revealing than I could have imagined. They'd planned to meet again to take things further. I saw her talking about how she hated the marriage and how she was finally free now. My stomach turned. How long had she been doing this behind my back? How many lies had I believed? The thought that she'd been fooling around with Jax, especially when he was supposed to be helping us find my brother, that was the thing that made me feel sickest. That realization hit like a wave. She didn't care about us, about the investigation, about truth. All she cared about was her own selfish needs. That bitchy attitude, her quick temper, her lies, they all had a reason. She wanted out and was willing to screw anyone to get her way. I started to see her in a new light, manipulative, entitled, and downright evil when it suited her. One evening, I finally decided I had enough. I went to her house to pick up the last of her things. She was there, sitting on the couch, pretending to be innocent. She looked at me with that same bitchy smirk and tried to guilt-trip me, saying I was being unfair, that I was the one who was controlling and insecure, but I just looked at her and shook my head. "You lied to me for months," I said coldly. "You cheated on me with Jax while pretending to be this perfect wife. I hope you're happy with yourself." I handed her a box of her belongings and told her to leave. She yelled, cursed, made herself out to be the victim, but I didn't care anymore. I'd finally had enough. As she stormed out, I felt a strange mixture of relief and despair. I knew I'd made the right decision, but it still hurt so much. I was angry, betrayed, and lonely as hell. But I also felt stronger, like I'd taken back some control of my life. I was done with her lies, her bitchy attitude, her manipulations. I realized I'd been a fool to trust her so blindly, but I also knew I'd survive without her. That night, I lay in bed alone, staring at the ceiling. The silence was deafening, but it also meant I could finally start healing. I knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy. I still had the investigation, my brother's disappearance, and the heartbreak of losing my wife. But I also knew that I'd come out of this stronger. I had to believe that, because if I didn't, I'd never be able to move on. And I wasn't about to let her ruin me completely. I'd find a way to get through this somehow. The days turned into a whirlwind of legal meetings, emotional roller coasters, and trying to piece myself back together. I wasn't the kind of guy who just gives up, but honestly I felt like I'd been knocked down so many times I didn't know if I could stand up again. Still, I had to keep going. I had to focus on the bigger picture, my brother, the investigation, and finding some semblance of peace after all the chaos. Divorce papers were filed, and Lisa fought me every step of the way. She tried to manipulate the situation, calling me insecure, claiming I was jealous of her affair with Jax. She even accused me of trying to control her life, which was laughable considering the amount of evidence I had against her. But her bitchy attitude only fueled my resolve. I knew her type. She thought she could spin her way out of everything, present herself as the victim, and keep her head held high. In the midst of it all, I kept digging into the case. I wanted to understand what Jax was really doing. Was he just a pawn? Or was he involved in something darker? I hired a private investigator to follow him, gather intel, and try to connect the dots. I needed to know if my wife's relationship with him was just about sex or if there was some hidden agenda. What I found was disturbing. Jax had some shady connections, and it looked like he was tied to other unsolved cases. That only made me more suspicious. Was my wife just using him as a cover, or did they both have some twisted plan that was bigger than just a fling? Meanwhile, Lisa was still desperate to cling to her lies. She kept trying to guilt me, saying she loved me, that she'd do anything to fix what she broke. But I saw through her. She was the same bitchy manipulator she'd always been, just with a different face now. Every time she called, I would just listen and then hang up. I didn't want to hear her bullshit anymore. I was done being played. One afternoon, I got a call from the private investigator. He had some surprising news. Jax had made a series of private calls to someone else, someone not connected to the case, someone who seemed to be orchestrating a lot of things behind the scenes. I pushed for details, my mind racing. If Jax was just a pawn, then who was pulling his strings? And what was Lisa hiding? The pieces didn't add up, but one thing was clear. This was bigger than a simple affair or a betrayal. It was messy, dangerous, and I had to stay sharp. I also started to understand that I couldn't just cut her out completely without consequences. The divorce was messy, Lisa was bitter, and she was trying everything to keep control, but I refused to let her manipulate me anymore. I met with my lawyer, laid out everything I knew, and prepared for a fight. I wasn't going to let her drag this out, not anymore. I needed closure, not just for me but for my brother and the investigation that still hung in the balance. One night, I was minding my own business, scrolling through some texts and emails, when I stumbled upon something shocking. A message from Lisa to Jax, almost a month after everything was supposed to have cooled down. It was a detailed plan about how they'd meet again, how she wanted to get rid of all the stress, and how she was finally free to do whatever she wanted. That was the moment I realized this wasn't just about some affair. It was a carefully planned, calculated move, something bigger, darker, and way more fucked up than I'd ever imagined. That realization hit me like a freight train. She wasn't just cheating because she was unhappy or bored. She was actively involved in some scheme, one that probably had roots way deeper than a simple affair. I felt sick knowing I'd trusted her all those years, feeling like a complete fool. How could a woman so bitchy and manipulative turn out to be capable of this level of deceit? I decided I'd had enough. The next day, I sat down with my lawyer and laid out my plan. I'd gather every shred of evidence, file for full custody, and make sure she couldn't manipulate her way out of this one. I didn't want her to get away with ruining my life, my family, and whatever little dignity I had left. I was angry, but I was also determined. I'd fight this, even if it meant tearing everything apart. As I prepared for the final battle, I couldn't help but reflect on everything I'd learned. Trust is fragile, I guess, and some people just aren't who they seem to be. Lisa proved that in spades. Her bitchy attitude, her lies, her manipulation, all of it was a facade. Beneath it was a woman capable of anything to get what she wanted, and I was stupid enough to believe she loved me, that she was loyal. Now I know better. I've learned that sometimes the biggest betrayals come from the people you trust most, and the only way to survive them is to be ready to cut the poison out. I don't know what's ahead, but I do know I won't be fooled again. I'll rebuild my life, without her, without the lies, and somehow I'll find peace again. It's going to be a long road, but I'm ready to walk it now. The final phase of everything hit me harder than I expected. The court date arrived, and with it came the truth I'd been piecing together for months. Lisa's bitchy attitude had morphed into outright defiance, but I felt no mercy anymore. I sat across from her in that courtroom, watching her spin her lies, act like the victim, trying to sway the judge with her manipulative charm. But I had all the evidence, every text, every hotel receipt, the recordings, the private investigators' reports. I wasn't about to let her get away with this. When I finally got my turn, I laid it all out. How she'd been hiding her affair with Jax, how she'd been involved in a scheme way bigger than just cheating on me. I told the judge about the plans she'd made to meet him again, how she'd used her role in the investigation to cover her tracks. Her face was a mask of bitchy arrogance, but I saw the flicker of defeat in her eyes as the evidence was presented. The judge didn't hold back. She granted me full custody of my son, ordered Lisa to stay away from Jax, and awarded me the house. It was a victory, one I fought for hard, but even as I left the courtroom relieved, I knew this was just the beginning of healing. The betrayal had cut so deep that I wasn't sure I'd ever completely forget what she'd done. Still, I was free. Free from her manipulations, her lies, her bitchy attitude that had once disguised something far darker. In the months that followed, I threw myself into rebuilding, my son, my career, my sanity. I stayed far away from Lisa, blocking her from my life entirely. I couldn't trust her anymore, not after everything she'd done. Even her attempts at guilt trips and manipulative sob stories didn't sway me. I'd learned the hard way that some people, no matter how bitchy or charming, are capable of destroying you if you let them. Looking back, I realize I've grown from this nightmare. I learned that trust isn't just about believing someone. It's about protecting yourself from the ones who hide their true selves. Lisa's betrayal taught me that sometimes you have to tear down everything you thought was solid to find your footing again. Her lies, her manipulations, they're part of what made me stronger now. I see through the bullshit more clearly. Right now, I'm focusing on my son, my own peace, and figuring out what's next. I know there's still a lot of healing to do, and I'll probably carry scars for a long time. But I also know that I survived. I faced the betrayal head-on and came out the other side. The woman I married turned out to be just a bitchy liar trying to manipulate her way through life, and I refuse to let her define me anymore. This whole experience has been a brutal lesson in trust, betrayal, and resilience. I don't regret uncovering the truth, even if it hurt like hell. Because now I can finally breathe again. I can look in the mirror and know I did everything in my power to protect myself and my family. And that's all I can ask for. Moving forward, I'll keep my guard up, stay honest with myself, and never ignore the red flags again. Because sometimes, the biggest lessons come from the worst betrayals, lessons that remind you to never take anyone's loyalty for granted, especially not the bitchy, manipulative ones.